Good day, everyone, as you come in. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome. Feel free to make yourselves comfortable. Get yourself a cup of tea, cup of coffee, whatever you do. Share where you're calling in from, right, in the chat, and then we'll get started. My name is Allard. I am co-founder of RegenIntel, which is a consulting company that pushes the world towards a regenerative world. Right, so we'll get into that, and we'll get into what we are to do today here, which is discuss careers within the climate and regenerative space and how to use social media to maximize that. Right, so let's dive right into some slides today, and we will be able to hear from you all what you're interested in and how you may have some challenges that we can hopefully help you with in your transition to a regenerative career and how you can use social media to improve that. So today's agenda is quite simple. So I'll just let you know a bit more about RegenIntel and Cherry. We'll go through, of course, some initial thoughts on regenerative careers and social media. Then we'll have a deeper chat with Cherry, and we'll take some questions. All right. So what is RegenIntel, right? So we are a mission-derived organization. Our goal is to harness the collective wisdom of society to align ourselves with nature. And we summarize that in that phrase at the bottom there, which is activating humanity to become a planet-positive species. That means that as a species, we contribute to and we benefit from nature, right? And we are aware of this. And we are slowly as a society moving towards this, but our goal is to accelerate this. And what we do as RegenIntel is we have training for professionals to be aware of and to maximize their positive impact, as well as consulting services for organizations around the world. So we are focused on global change towards the planet-positive species. And we also have Cherry. Cherry is going to be joining us today to discuss this topic. So Cherry is a seasoned entrepreneur and climate tech recruitment specialist. She is the founder of Above and Beyond Recruitment, a boutique agency that supports climate tech startups by helping them to attract top talent globally. Her company emphasizes sustainability, planting 10 trees for every placement made and donating 1% of annual profits to carbon removal projects. So thank you, Cherry, for agreeing to be with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yes. So let's talk a bit about climate jobs, regenerative jobs, and social media. All right. Now, I think it's always useful to start with the Ikigai diagram, which is a Japanese concept of being the most effective human you can be. That's a way that I put it, at least. But they kind of summarize those 4 areas of your life as how to think about what you do, your professional activities, your work, etc. And I like to start with this to ground us on why we do what we do. Sometimes we fall into professional work because it's just expected of us. But I think taking a step back to making sure we plan, we think carefully about our lives, think about what we want to do, why we want to do it. And of course, in those 4 areas of the Ikigai diagram, what you love to do, what you're good at, what you can be paid for, as well as what the world needs. Being in the center of that is the most powerful, I think. So that's why I want to ground us with this. But in terms of how we turn that into a climate work, I think it's important for us to start with a definition, right? So we are guided by the Work on Climate definition here, which is a nonprofit that helps, a lot of professionals around the world move into climate work. And their definition, I think, is useful because it's so broad and it's applied to the problem of climate change. So you might be working in a company where your work itself helps to fix climate change. That could be, encouraging, greener energy solutions, encouraging the adoption of cleaner fuels, encouraging the use of clean electricity, whatever it is. Or maybe your role is at a company that does that, right? So maybe you do the accounting or you do the legal work for a company whose role is to mainly do that. Or maybe your organization helps customers that do that. Right? So I think this helps to expand the perspective, but we thought at RegenIntel that we'd take this one step further, all right? How do you use this climate job definition to define regenerative jobs, right? So we think regenerative should be around the flourishing of life on the planet, right? Life means not only human life, but also non-human life. So what does that mean in terms of jobs, right? So we think it's largely a job where you are mainly focused on the flourishing of life. So that might be doing climate work, or it might be doing work along the lines of improving biodiversity, reducing desertification. There's a range of areas within this broad field, right? Or again, you are at an organization that does that, right? So maybe you, again, accounting, legal, that of a company or an organization, a nonprofit that does that work, that improves the flourishing of life. Or again, your customers do that, right? So we think it's important to start with these definitions so that our minds are thinking as broadly as possible about what climate work or regenerative work is, okay? And there's a lot of jobs out there. We thought we'd just list a couple of these. Feel free to screenshot this and you can look them up later. But basically, there are a lot of job boards that list positions within the climate and regenerative spaces. Big ones are on the screen, as well as Cherry's company, Above and Beyond Recruiting, at the bottom there on the left side. So there's a lot of resources out there to find where these jobs are listed. We also thought that on the right side, some tools for preparing yourself for applying and for achieving these jobs is important, all right? So feel free to screenshot this. I'll leave it for a few more seconds and then we'll continue, all right? So how do you get these climate and regenerative jobs? Obviously, it's important to learn, right? You need to, if you're coming from outside of the sector, if you don't have a climate background, environmental background, I think you need to first understand what it means to be working in climate or working in regeneration, right? So you need to have the language, have the lingo or the usual lingo. You have to understand what's important for organizations in this space. We believe that our RegenIntel Foundations course is a great starting point for that. And of course, there are other things, there are other ways you can learn, right? So once you're learning about what's happening and what's changing in maybe it's the political, it's the economic space, societal space, etc., that's also important. But I also think it's important to bring your existing skills, right? So we'll talk a bit about that with Cherry today, that bringing your skills in makes you valuable within the climate space, right? So trying to start afresh is a bit harder, I think, although it is possible, but I recommend you start with what you know. So if you're a marketer and you want to work in climate, you can apply those marketing skills to a challenge within climate. It might be a startup or an organization, or it might be getting people to change their behaviors. And that, of course, is very valuable. Personal branding is very important here, right? So I like to think of it as what people think of you when you're not in the room. And therefore, today's session about social media is really about personal branding on the internet. So we'll certainly get into that in more detail. And I think networking is a key part of this, right? So we're all networking here today. We're going to be networking with each other, outside of this session in real life or on other virtual sessions. And that's a key part of this. It scares some people, but to be honest, it's just making a friend, right? It doesn't have to be somebody you know deeply in a personal way, but it's somebody who respects you and who you respect and who you can have a conversation with, maybe to share ideas, right? So I think the challenge about connecting and networking is overcome by making it a habit, right? So make it something you do regularly as a way to build your network. And of course, that way, when you need to reach out to your network, it doesn't seem like you're demanding because you already made it a habit of reaching out to people and offering value. And a few resources to make that a bit easier. Here are some books that I've read, which I highly recommend you look into if you have challenges with networking, with connecting. And I think these would make it a bit easier, make the models of how you do this a bit easier for you, all right? So connecting, networking, branding, we want to go in a bit deeper detail on that today with a few facts, right? So we know a large proportion of the jobs that are obtained, to get a job these days, 85% of the time is filled through networks, right? So this could be as simple as instead of going to a job application or having that process, an organization has somebody that they think can fill this particular role. So they don't even paste the job online, they just connect with that person, right? The network, trumps having the job application process, right? So that's very common. Also, it's important to build real relationships, like I hinted at earlier. It's about building a friend, making a friend, and doing it in real life as well as online, right? So online allows us to connect. Before we started today's session, we shared that we are, the ones who are organizing today's session, we're in 4 different countries, right? But it's important also to keep those in real, face-to-face connections, right? Because that is just not replaced by Zoom, to be honest, right? Zoom is great, but face-to-face is much better. Something that we heard the last time we did a session like this is the potential of having a portfolio career. So if you're thinking of moving into climate, maybe starting with 20% time, 10% time, 50% time, whatever works, as a way to experiment with what you can feel comfortable doing in the climate or regenerative spaces. And then, of course, if you want to add to that, change to that, it's easier if you have this portfolio approach. And of course, being consistent, constantly sharing content is important for building these relationships. So today's session is about creating and sharing content. All right, let's talk a bit about what that means for social media. So what's the benefit of this? I mean, this is probably obvious to you all if you're here already, but just to kind of summarize as we go through, your visibility. If you're looking for a job in this space or you're looking for a job generally, being on social media is very valuable. And I'm sure that Cherry will confirm that as we discuss later. Networking opportunities, as we said earlier, very important. And it's important to manage this on a regular basis. Personal branding, we talked about that. Access to job listings. So if, for instance, you are constantly chatting with others, including recruiters like Cherry, about roles that are coming up, the direction of the market, then you are likely to find out about job opportunities before others, all right? So again, that networking is important and that brand is important. Credibility and trust, you build that online as you have a presence, and of course, being informed and career advancement, of course, benefited from doing this, all right? So, making content. Let's talk a bit about that because that is something I think many professionals shy away from in today's world, and it's a challenge for many of us because we haven't been trained to brand ourselves necessarily, right? Most people, they go to school, they learn, they become an expert in an area, and now we are told about doing social media where you have to market yourself, brand yourself, and reach out to strangers online, right? So what I thought we'd do here is just kind of go through a couple models for how you can think about content. Content meaning that which attracts people to you online, right? So again, that's part of the branding, part of the networking. And there's some example models of how you can do this that may be a bit less scary for professionals. So the expert model. Let's say you're very knowledgeable about marketing. Again, maybe you can talk about how marketing is applied to climate work or applied to regenerative work. Some of the challenges and some of your knowledge is shared with the world. Case studies, industry insights, whatever it might be. All right. So that's one approach if you're very knowledgeable about an area that you want to link to climate or regeneration in some way. And this might be one that works for you. But there are others if you don't think of yourself as an expert. So for instance, the explorer model is on the flip side of that. So the idea here is you want to go exploring something within some topic within climate or regeneration, and you want to take the audience with you, right? So there are many people out there who also want to learn about climate, learn about regeneration, maybe from your perspective, your industry, your country, your region, whatever it might be. And maybe you want to share with them as you learn what you learn, right? So they want to learn from you because you are closer to their understanding, so they can grow with you in knowledge and awareness, right? So that's one approach that you can also consider. The curator model looks more at what's happening out there within a particular space. So let's say you're interested in AI. Most of the world is talking about it now. You want to link AI to climate. You want to find out what that means in terms of using AI for climate, vice versa, etc. And you're trying to understand out there what's happening in the industry, in both industries that interact with each other. Maybe you want to do a weekly roundup. This is the update on AI and climate, and you want to send it out to people who are also interested, who might become your audience, right? So it's a way of curating out there a lot of knowledge, a lot of noise perhaps, in a way that's easy to consume for your audience, right? And then you have the storyteller model. right? So last time we did this, one of our fellows in our course said that he thinks of himself as a storyteller, so this model works for him much more than the others, right? So maybe that's it for you. Maybe you're a filmmaker, maybe you're a writer, maybe you're a designer of some way, and you're really good at telling stories. What is a story about regeneration that you can tell to get people talking about this particular area, and of course, get them to realize that you exist and that you have some contribution to make? So this is another one you can consider. Now, making content is a change of mindset for most of us. So we recommend for beginners that you start as simply as possible. If you're a beginner, this might be useful. Be consistent, depending on the platform, that might be every day, every week, or 3 times a week, whatever it is. Especially in the beginning when there isn't a lot of interaction and engagement, it's very important to think of it as just a thing you have to do until you see response online, because that could take a while, months, weeks, depending on what you're doing. So consistency is key, and engaging with others, right? These platforms these days love engagement, especially, a platform like LinkedIn, which is probably where you heard about this event. They love the commenting, the posting, the responding, the liking, etc., just as most of these platforms. So engaging is good, but of course, it's important to also be authentic, right? So don't put posts that don't align with your personal views, or interacting or messaging that don't align with your personal views. That's not my recommendation. However, it's important to find what works for you and build on that. And I would recommend looking at as much audio-visual as possible. All right. So now we're going to switch to chatting with Cherry about this before we take your questions. And I'd like to bring you in, Cherry. Let me stop sharing here. Excellent. Great. So we've set the tone, hopefully.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to discuss in this, right? I think we have a lot of questions about how to get started, questions about what you put on social media, what you do, where I can fit as an individual, right? It's quite overwhelming, I think, for many people, especially today where it's almost required for you to get a job these days. But I think one thing that maybe some fellows or some attendees are wondering is about getting into climate and getting into regeneration in the first place. So Cherry, I know you've done that in the last few years. So I thought maybe very briefly you can give us a snippet of your story of getting into climate. Like, why did it happen? How did you do it? And maybe how you use some social media to make it happen.
Absolutely. Yeah, happy to share. So it was interesting you shared that post about Ikigai, because that was the route to me finding my career in climate. So I'm very glad that you shared that with everybody. So my background, hi everyone, my name's Cherry, I'm based in the UK, and as Ryan said, I run a business called Above and Beyond Recruitment, which I set up in May 2021. Prior to that, I'd spent about 15 years in recruitment, in tech recruitment, but very broad umbrella tech. So, any different type of technology, any different type of industry, usually software based, and a lot in the Cambridge market in the UK. But the thread that sort of ran through that time was that I really loved working with startups. I really loved working with early stage teams, with founders that had an incredible vision and wanted to use technology in some unique or innovative way to change the future, right? And that was what I loved. And I loved working with them and partnering with them to help build a team around them that would bring that to life. And that was what I was passionate about. Towards the end of that part of my career, so 15 years in, I'd gotten a little bit further away from the recruiting. I was running a team. I'd lost touch with the bit that I loved, which was the day-to-day, getting people jobs, building teams. And this all coincided with the pandemic in 2020. So I was pregnant at the time with my second child. So I went on furlough. Furlough turned into maternity leave, and I had a year off, and I knew immediately I don't want to go back. But I spent a summer thinking, well, if I don't go back to that job, what do I do next? So I spent this mad summer thinking I'm going to retrain as a psychotherapist. I'll be an author, maybe a teacher. I went down a million different career avenues in my head before I stumbled upon this concept of Ikigai, where I thought, hang on a minute, I don't actually have to completely reinvent the wheel here. What I want, and what was common in all of those other careers that I was thinking about, was purpose and impact and touching people's lives, improving people's lives for the better. And I thought, I don't actually need to reinvent the wheel to do that. I can carry on doing what I'm already good at, what I've already built some career capital in, and just, put a more positive impact lens on it. And I thought, well, what do I really care about? If I'm thinking about impact, big picture, what's the bit that really keeps me up at night? And for me, that was climate and sustainability, climate change specifically. And I thought, well, climate tech is actually disproportionately full of startups. And I've spent 15 years working with startups and helping them attract talent. So, hey, I could do that. So that was where the idea came from. So my route into climate was by setting my own company up and just going out there and doing it, right? Rather than going and getting a job doing it. But social media has been, since I launched Above and Beyond, social media has been a huge part of helping me build my brand, build my business, build my reputation. And I couldn't have done anything that I've done without the help of that, I'd say. And really early on, actually, I think it's really relevant to say here that one of the first investments I made in my business, and I literally did this months into it, was to start working with a personal brand specialist. And I did a 12-week course with a lady called Lindsay, who's fantastic, and she's now my business coach, where I did a 12-week course on how to use LinkedIn, how to build a brand, how to create great content. And everything that she taught me in that, I have just lived and breathed for the last 4 years. And it's been really helpful.
Oh, that's fantastic. Oh my goodness. Yeah, so we have a great starting point here. You said that you did some introspection. So maybe that's something for us to double click on for our fellows here or attendees here, because sometimes people run into things and don't realize what's going to happen later on, maybe experimenting, which is great. But how important was that introspection? And is it started with the coach you did with that person, or is there something else that, happened that allowed you to do the introspection needed?
I think it really helped having the time and the space just generally that the pandemic forced upon us to be able to sit with some of those thoughts for a while, and make some of those decisions. I think when you're running at 1,000,000 miles an hour, like on the hamster wheel of life, you don't actually get that opportunity to stop and think. So I think that enforced stop gave me that space for introspection. I think also the point at which you have a child is just naturally quite a point in time, right, where you tend to stop and ruminate and think about what's important and where you're at in life. But I think I had gotten as far when I launched the business of knowing I wanted to have positive impact. And I kept that impact wording actually quite broad when I first launched the business. So a lot of the branding that I went out to market with was about positive impact careers. And it was really when I started working with that personal branding coach where she said, you can't be everything to everybody. And to be successful to start off with, you need to know your niche and you need to build your brand around your niche. So there are all these areas of impact. What's the bit that you really care about? And that was when I nailed it down to climate, and the power of technology and innovation to make an impact. And that was
Excellent.
how I really honed that messaging around climate tech and climate tech startups.
All right, excellent. All right. So you said that you work with a branding coach. Tell us a bit more about what you learned there that where you immediately applied and what maybe took some more time. What were the big lessons that came out of that maybe we could learn from today?
Yeah, she was fantastic. So and what I learned from her, I use every day. So first thing she got me to think about was two things in tandem, right? What do I want to be known for? What am I building? And what am I selling? What do I want to be known for? So for me, that was, I want any founder that's running an early stage climate tech company to think of me when they want to grow and build their team. I want anybody that is a mid to later stage career professional that's pivoting into climate to think of me when they want to make that move. That was what I wanted to be known for, helping people make those career transitions, helping those startups scale. And then the second part of that question, which leads really nicely onto the first, is who are you speaking to when you're building this brand? Who are you talking to when you're writing your profile? Who are you talking to when you're writing your posts? And being really clear about that, so you're always getting the tone of voice and the message across to the right people in the right way. So they were the first two things that she got me to think about. So we spent quite a lot of time in those first sessions, me really fleshing out, well, what is my business offering? Why is what I do unique? Why would somebody want to work with me? And then who am I talking to? And building out, it's a bit of a marketing exercise, but building out those personas of, okay, well, if I am talking to a startup founder, typically what would that person look like? What point at their, appreciate, they're not all going to be the same, right? But there are maybe some things that they would have in common around things that interest them or motivate them or whatever it may be. So starting to pull out some of those threads and where I can then speak to those motivations. Does that
Hmm.
make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's almost like developing a customer persona for
Mm.
who you want to engage, and that customer in this case, well, you're looking at you created a company that would look out for specific clients, right? In the case of somebody who might be looking to get a job, how do you think they can use that approach of defining that customer? Who's that customer going to be, you think?
Yeah, great question. So I think that, so one of the things, if I talk about how I did it, and then I'll talk about how as a job seeker they could do it. So a couple of the things that we landed on was that founders that are building startups in the climate space, they're struggling with the challenges of building an early stage business and getting their name out there and having to wear all the hats and juggle
Yeah.
everything. Stressful that is. And actually, that's what I'm doing. I'm building a business myself, and it's not a climate tech company. It's a professional services business. It's a consultancy, but I too am a startup founder. So, okay, I can empathize with them on that journey. And if I can be open about how I'm building my business in public, then they will see they'll get that I understand them and I understand their journey. And they will be more likely perhaps to want to work with me because they'll feel that I get them. So that was one of the areas that we looked at. One of the other things was just a really silly thing. I mean, people want to work with you for a couple of reasons, right? They believe you can do a good job. They trust your knowledge and your capability. They need your services right now, and they like and trust you. And
Right.
that third one, that building that like and trust piece was important. So actually I found, and this, not everybody feels comfortable with this, but I found actually that sharing a little bit about who I am, my journey, who I am outside of work, my family, my life, actually ended up being a really good thing because people saw beyond the brand, saw me as a human being. And actually, I think that was actually very helpful. And often, not always, startup founders are going to be probably at maybe a similar life stage to me, right? So they may also be juggling running a business with 2 small children. And so, sharing some of that personal stuff was useful. I think when it comes to trying to get a job in the space, and if you are an expert in a particular area, I think perhaps thinking about what challenges a business owner or an employer or a founder is likely to be facing around the area you specialize in, and how you can help take that burden away from them or help them solve that problem or help them overcome that issue
Mhm.
by expertise and your knowledge, right?
I like that. Yeah. In other words, thinking a little bit like a business owner yourself, thinking of helping another person, in this case, humanizing it. I think you use that word well, because thinking of them as a person who has a specific problem that you as a future employee can solve. So
Yes.
it's not organization engaging with organization. It's an organization getting somebody to solve their problem. And therefore you need to think deeply about what those problems are.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I talk about a lot, if there's anyone on this call that's from a product background, I talk a lot about in the startup world, there's this, product market fit is really
Mhm.
crucial. Figuring out what am I selling, who am I selling it to, and why do they want it? When you're looking for a job, I think figuring out what your product market fit is, or we call it candidate market fit, is really
Mhm.
important. Think of yourself as a product. Think of your employment as an exchange of, services for money. You're selling a product. You need to figure out, who am I? What am I as a product? Who would want me? Who is my ideal customer, i.e. employer? And how do I sell myself to them?
Perfect. Yeah. And let's talk a bit about your role in recruitment. So you've been doing recruitment for approaching 2 decades. So you're experts in this, right? So we want to know from let's say somebody who's interested in getting into climate, they're now going to do some social media, let's say. What do you look for as a recruiter? What do they need to have to just get your attention and then get you to follow through to say, you know what, I definitely want to get Cherry to come and do an interview or something. What do you look for?
Good question. I think the key thing to note here is how busy and noisy the market is, and how important it is to be able to stand out amongst all of that noise. I was sharing with Ryan just before this call began the fact that, it's no secret that the economy has been in a bit of a nightmare of a place for the last couple of years. And there's been layoffs after layoffs, things haven't eased really at any point in the last 2 years. And so there has been an increasing amount of people in the market looking for work. And that, that bank of people looking for jobs has steadily grown over the last 2 years. And as climate change has become an ever more visible problem, an issue in the world, more and more of those people want to work in the climate space. So there's this really big imbalance between the amount of climate jobs that are out there, because the people hiring are, in most cases, still quite small companies, They have limited funds. They don't, they're not hiring at scale. And this huge amount of people that want to work on the problem. And it's a great problem to have, but it's a problem nonetheless, right? That we have all these great people that want to work in the space. There's a lot of noise to need to stand out on. The number one thing for me, I would say, is genuine passion. I think that, and like genuine passion and the ability to kind of demonstrate that passion clearly. I think that you were sharing, Ryan, the slides about all of the different places you can go to look for a job in climate. I think the problem is the climate job marketplace is still pretty fragmented. And actually, any job that you'll find on any one of those Slack channels or job boards or anything ultimately will also be on LinkedIn, probably, right? It's like the belt and braces, isn't it? Everything is also on LinkedIn. So you'll find that probably like 80% of your job applications, maybe more, are going through LinkedIn. Now, as somebody who literally reviews, I'm not exaggerating when I say thousands of LinkedIn applications a week. We just had a marketing manager job we advertised. I had 1,400 applications for that one job. Every single person that applies through LinkedIn, I won't just read their CV, I will also go and look at their profile. And it would definitely get somebody over the line if they had a stronger profile. So
And what does a stronger profile mean?
Yeah, good question. So I would say a couple of things. First of all, that their profile is aligned with their CV. So there's kind of clear parity between. Sometimes I'll see things on a CV and then I'll go on LinkedIn and they haven't bothered updating it in a couple of years and the last job is missing and it's all a bit haphazard. There's no picture, like it's all a bit haphazard. To me, a strong profile is like a professional looking but friendly and approachable looking picture. I don't index too heavily on that, but it's useful.
Right.
I think you can really maximize the use of the headline. So the bit at the top where you say who you are and what you do. You don't just have to put like project manager. You can put, you can put a bit of flair around it that demonstrates within project management exactly why, what it is you do, why you're brilliant about it, and why you want to do it in climate. So you can really utilize the word count there to really get across what you want to do. So if you're in product, for example, you could say senior product manager, highly experienced at going 0 to 1 in early stage startups, passionate about nature and biodiversity. If I'm an early stage nature and biodiversity startup, like amazing, you're a good person for me, right? Makes it really clear. Then you've got that about section where you can go into lots of, it's a nice sort of succinct summary there of, I would say, your candidate market fit. Right? Who am I? How do I sound like a personable human? A little bit about your journey and your flair. Who am I? Where do I fit nicely? And why would you want to hire me? And then you've got that opportunity with each of your kind of career bits to go into a little bit more detail about each company, what you did. You utilize it like an extension of your CV. And then I look at the last few things people have posted.
Right.
To see, are they active on there? Are they commenting on things? Are they engaged in the space? People want to see passion and a commitment to learn. And I think if they see that people are really active on there, and
that's a good indicator, yeah. And so in passion, it's important, therefore, if you're exploring climate and regeneration, therefore you need to look for the part of climate and regeneration that you feel passionate about. Otherwise, it's just not going to come out. You'll be kind of faking it a bit, and it's going to be very visible to someone like you who's looking through 1,400 of these in a week, right? So yeah, okay. So that's important. That's
a blend between the bit you're passionate about and the bit you can add most value in. And I think one thing that people who pivot into climate can sometimes, so I think whenever anyone's making a career transition, I always say, go to the closest possible stepping stone. This is a journey. You're not getting to the dream job straight away. It might be a couple of stepping stones to get to that dream job. But for this next step, try and get as close to where you are as possible, right? And so think about, who am I? What stage of company have I worked at? What types of challenges have they been through? What type of market was it? And what's the closest climate equivalent to this? I think people forget that bit and they go immediately for passion. And so you'll get somebody who maybe, has been a product manager in a I don't know, financial services company, right? And so the closest possible step might be in some kind of sustainable finance or carbon markets or something like that. They'll kind of throw that out the window and go, yeah, but I love oceans. So I'm going to work in ocean tech, but have no experience in anything connected. So I think, yes, lean into the passion. It is important that you are genuine about what you're talking about. And I don't think you should go for carbon markets if you've got no interest in it. But I think go for something that's as close as possible or as similar as possible to the world that you've been in. Rather than just chasing the passion.
Right. So I guess it goes back to that Ikigai diagram again, where it's passion, but ability as well as all the other two, right? What the world needs, what you can get paid for, right? So, okay, good. Now let's talk some tactics here, right? So I have a profile. I haven't really updated it in 2 years. I have to go and do content now. Where do I start? What's the first thing I do this week? And what should I try to do for the next month just to get an opportunity to get your attention, let's say, as a recruiter?
Perfect. Step one, the profile, right? And before you do anything else, get your house in order, get your profile looking good. I've shared, and I'm not saying mine's perfect and everybody copy me, but I've spent a lot of years doing this, right? So my link to my LinkedIn is in the comments. Feel free to go and have a look if you want some kind of template or guide. But yeah, I think take some time, take some effort to build out the profile. Things like being able to use that cover photo at the top, put something in there that is a visual display of what you're passionate about, what you're interested in, who you are, right? But build that profile out. That is step one. Once you've built the profile out, step two is to start to build your network. There's no point jumping in and immediately posting, because if you haven't got a network of relevant people seeing it, you're kind of just posting into the ether or into all your old network connections from, I don't know, whatever you did before, right? So I would start to then supplement your profile network, build out your network with relevant people. Now, how do you find those people? I think step one, you can be connecting with people that like finding companies that are in the space, right? I would start there. I would think, right, if this is an area that I'm interested in or passionate in, who are the top startups building in this space or the top companies building in this space? Follow their company pages, then go in and find the people that work either in the senior leadership team, definitely, but people who work in the division you'd love to be in, and start connecting with them. Following them. That's a great place to start. I would also be looking at then, as they're posting things, make sure that you're engaging. So as you're building your network over time, start engaging with the content that those people are creating. So set yourself a little reminder every morning to go on. Most people post between sort of 9 and 10 a.m.-ish, right? But set yourself a little window of time every day to go in and through your newfound network, scroll through and look at what they're posting about, look at what they're talking about, look at what's interesting to them, right? I think people say if you want to be an author, you need to read more. I think if you want to be a great content creator, you need to consume more content, right? So sign up to newsletters, sign up to everything and anything and everything, read and absorb as much as you can, but make sure that you are commenting and engaging with that content. So get your profile right, build out your network, and then start engaging with that network. What you can also do to be smart is look at who is liking their content and who is commenting on it. And you can do a little bit of detective work and like, oh, 6 people commented on that thing that the CEO of this company wrote. Who are they? And you might find one of them an investor in climate and one of them's the CEO of another climate company and all this stuff, and then connect with them. All of this stuff like spiders out. Another great resource for finding people to add to your network is Open Door Climate. So Open Door Climate is a directory. It is a movement, basically, of individuals that already work in the climate space. And they're basically saying, my door is open for virtual coffees, for chats with anybody else that wants to get into the space that I could help, right? So there's a hashtag Open Door Climate, and I think there's even a website, Open Door Climate, which is basically a database of all the people that have said, hey, I've got a climate job already and I'm happy to help others. You can go in there and you can filter by location, you can filter by job type, go and find all the people in there that do the job you wish you could do, connect with them all, grab a coffee with them, learn from them all, but add them to your network, and then you can build that over time. And then, and only then, I think you should start posting and posting regularly. Don't wait till your network gets to a certain size, but you're going to be doing that continually in tandem, and then start posting. And then on the posting side, I think it helps to do that exercise I talked about at the beginning. Figure out who are you? What's this unique blend that you bring to the world that nobody else does? Who do you want to be talking to? Well, someone that's going to give you a job in climate, ideally. And then build some content pillars, some types of content that you can share that will get the attention that speaks to those people.
Awesome. And as you prepare to switch to questions, I ask your audience to start to prepare your questions. Feel free to type them in the chat. We'll have Ali bring them up, or we could bring you on to have a conversation, right? But as we transition, there are a couple more questions, Cherry. So first of all, that Open Door Climate group, last I checked was a few months ago, and it was already at 1,700 persons, right? So it's a large database already. It's probably grown since then, all right? Now, tell me, you mentioned things that seem to be aligned with LinkedIn. So are you suggesting that we don't look at other platforms? There's X, there's Facebook, there are other new ones like Blue Sky, etc. Where do these fit into all of this?
Great question. I think that, broadly speaking, it very slightly depends on what you do, because there are some slight nuances there. However, for the most part, I would say X, I wouldn't be giving much time to personally, just because I think more and more companies are disengaging from it. I think fewer and fewer people are using it to the extent that they were before. It's become a bit politically charged. I think that as a platform looking for work may not be the best place. I think places like Blue Sky is still a little bit more niche. I think LinkedIn is a really good classic, everybody's on there. It's got a critical mass of audience, and everybody's on there to talk about work, specifically work. And so if you're wanting to get a job and you're wanting to talk about your career and what you're skilled in, I think that is the best place. However, I think if you do something incredibly visual, that Instagram can be great for that. If you're a designer, for example, there are other slightly more niche platforms that you can use for different types of jobs that you've got, special interest platforms. If you're an engineer, building out a profile on GitHub, for example, and sharing examples of your work on there and then linking that. But I think you need to be, if you've got presences on different platforms, I think figuring out how you pull them all back into one feed is really important, and having one place you focus on. I'm also a big believer in long form content, and I'm increasingly so. And you can do newsletters through LinkedIn, but you can also, I would definitely advocate for utilizing something like Substack or something like Medium. If you've got some really deep expertise to share in a particular area and you are good at writing and you want to share that through long form content, I think that's brilliant. And you can do that and then share those via LinkedIn. But I think ultimately, probably LinkedIn will be like the hub through which it will all sit, right?
Okay. And I suppose a quick follow-up to that is, do you think that there's any value in having your own website that somehow fits into all of these?
I think it depends what you do. I think if you are a software engineer, I think if you're a web developer, I think if you're a designer, I think if you have any form of a portfolio, for example, that having some sort of website of your own to share that through and on, yes, absolutely, because it's as much as you can physically demonstrate what you can do and how good you are at it, the better. But I think that if you are, I don't know, an ops manager, like really great at ops, you probably don't need a website. You probably, yeah, I think LinkedIn would be fine.
Okay. All right, great. And I suppose maybe we've seen a lot of talk about podcasting, about speaking, like you're speaking here today, whether it's in real life or virtual events, and there's so many elements of this. Where do these fit in all of this? Do you think that people should be trying to create a podcast as a way to maybe expand on their passion, put themselves position themselves as an expert? Is that valuable? For most people, is there something that they can use in that? How do you combine that with the posting, with the retweeting or the recommenting? So how do you put all of those different types of media together? And how do you select what's appropriate for you depending on your goal?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the podcast angle is a very interesting one, and it's something that we've done and I've done. I have a podcast, Climate Pioneers Show, that we're just about to do the 9th series of now. I think that it's still quite unique. I think as a job seeker, to be utilizing that as a form of social media content is still quite unique. So I think that would definitely make you stand out. I think it would definitely, if you were strategic about who you were bringing on to talk to, I think it would definitely help you to build real relationships with people. I think if you invite somebody onto a podcast and you talk with them and they share their journey with you, you're building some kind of a relationship that you can then, that could then hopefully turn into a job opportunity for you. I think there's value in that. So yeah, I do think it's a unique thing that I've not seen many job seekers do.
Okay, so it depends. All right. And as we wait for some more questions to come in here, do you think that the relationship that you build online with, say, recruiters is key in this, right? So you mentioned, okay, commenting on posts, maybe the CEO, maybe the recruiters of a particular company that you're targeting is out there and they're active and you're interacting with them. Do you think that is important, or how do you treat somebody who might be a potential hire engaging with you on LinkedIn? How do you respond to that? Whether they're messaging you, they're commenting on all your posts, they're tagging you, how do you respond to that?
Yeah, pretty positively. I think recruiters, yes, for sure, you should bring them into your network, ones that specialize in your space. I think also there are people that are real super connectors and like community influencers, for want of a better word, that, know a lot of people and are a well-known and well-trusted voice in the space, right? And figuring out who those people are and connecting with them, getting on a call with them, getting to know them, I think is really important. And I think that regularly posting, tagging those people in, commenting on people's things, it just keeps you at the forefront of their mind. I have a lot of people that message me on LinkedIn. I have a lot of people that join my career sessions every couple of weeks. I have a lot of people that then book one-on-one office hours with me. So I speak to a lot of people and I've got a pretty good memory and a very good database. But if people then regularly comment on my things on LinkedIn or regularly like things or will tag me in and go, I thought of you for this, then of course they will stay probably fresher in my mind than somebody else. And when that job comes in, they would probably be the person that I would think of first because, yeah, just by osmosis, right? I see their name more often.
Front of mind, yeah, excellent. All right, thanks, Cherry. So we're going to switch to questions, but I thought maybe we'd just do a very brief intro to some of the work we're doing at RegenIntel. So we have here just an introduction to our course, all right? Very briefly, we're going to basically help with a lot of the content that was shared today, right? So we talked about preparing yourself to enter the climate space, preparing yourself to engage in social media, preparing yourself to be aware of all these changes and to have impact within climate regeneration in some way. And our course helps, persons who are either exploring climate or people maybe who are experts in sustainability who want to go beyond sustainability. That's what we do in our course, right? So the foundations course is to help professionals do this. And our goal is to ensure that there's deep understanding of what's out there, the solutions, the approaches to developing the mindset to make this work, and of course, practical skills such as with social media. And this is important because we want you all to get into climate and sustainability, get that job, but do it well, not do it in a way that causes, knock-on problems, right? So it's important to get that holistic approach. So very briefly, the overview, 15-week course. We do it online. This is normally around midday or so New York time. We have assignments. We have a very global fellowship base, all right? We have a climate quest, which is a unique project to each fellow that they take on to basically, expand their impact. Right, so it has ranged from doing film to getting funding for climate initiatives and everything in between, right? And of course, we do certification at the end of the 15 weeks and there's special pricing available. So let's go to questions. And I believe there was one question from James regarding the website. So what you want to do is invite James on to ask this question and maybe you could expand on what we already discussed. James, if you feel confident here, and asking your question, you can come on.
For me, I just said that I was trying to figure out how to phrase it and thought it. But essentially, I was wondering if maintaining a personal website in the age of greater social media presence is considered a diminishing return or a self-indulgent behavior. But no, I enjoyed the answer we got. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, James. All right. So are there any other questions you want to bring up? I'm looking in the chat here. But
We
I
have
think,
Richard coming up with a question.
yes, Richard.
Yeah, hi. I did have a question, Cherry, based on something you mentioned. You made a good, like an interesting point at one stage where you said something about being able to demonstrate your passion for climate work or interest in this space and so on. And I wonder if you could share maybe something about the specifics of that, because I think many people that I've spoken to, and also for myself in the past, especially if you're new, it's easy to be simplistic about explaining what you're maybe why you're passionate, like why is this, why do you care about this? Oh, I want to save the world. Okay, that's just like everybody else, right? So I wonder if maybe you could share an example or and of course Ryan as well, not just Cherry, sorry, but yeah, just that bit. Thank you.
I think there's a couple of things that you can do. So I think one of the things is the why. What is your own personal story? We've all got our own link, our own personal moment, our own personal story that means that this is a space that we're really interested in. So sharing that, your own personal journey and your why, because like I said, that'll be unique for everyone, but will resonate, I think, with lots of other people. So that would be one. I think the other thing would be that share the things that you already do that demonstrate that you are a person that cares and a person that's committed, right? And a person that takes voluntary action to do good in the world. So whether you go volunteering once a week, take a picture of yourself volunteering, share the charity that you support, talk about what you do and why you do it and why it's so important to you. Whatever that may look like. It might even just be sustainable swaps that you're trying to make in your own life to live a greener life. What are those? You know, it might be a silly thing. I'm trying a new type of soap. I've switched my toothbrush to a bamboo one. Like whatever it is that you're doing in your own personal life, share those things because likely other people are on that same journey and will go, oh yeah, interesting. And the other thing I think is really important is to learn in public. A lot of us are out there doing courses, listening to audio books, we're reading newsletters, and again, share this stuff, I reckon. Don't learn in secret. I think, you know, Ryan said there about a form of content being that curator. You know, put a post out maybe once, I don't know how quickly you read, once a month, once a quarter, that's like, these are the best books I've read recently about this topic. I put a post out, if you look back on my LinkedIn, literally a couple of weeks ago, that was literally that, okay? It was like the 4 front covers of the book and just literally 2 or 3 words about each one, why I found it interesting or impactful. So something like that, I think, can be useful. So yeah, I'd say, what's your unique personal narrative and story? And yeah, your like learning in public piece, and then anything you're physically actively doing in your life that demonstrates you walk the walk.
Awesome. Great, thanks. We have a question from Hannah. Hannah, why don't you come on and let us know? And we see you, James. I'm not sure if you have another question, but we'll come to you afterwards. Hannah?
Hi there. Thank you. Thank you, Cherry and Ryan. This has been amazing. I'm seeking it's kind of twofold advice on early career pivots. So I know you said, you know, if you're in a certain area, maybe making the jump in that parallel area into climate. But what if it's like, I have like I'm interested in a plethora of things and I'm trying to pivot into climate in multiple ways. Like right now I do fundraising for a cancer organization. And with that, simultaneously, I get nervous about posting because it might become a little clear that like, I'm not really like aiming to stay in my job. Like I'm not posting in my industry. It might become like kind of apparent to so like that's the twofold, like tips for early career pivots. Like I'm not established in, you know, like product development or tech or finance or accounting and can easily look at other organizations and say, hey, it's a climate organization that has accounting. And also like towing the line on like posting when I'm currently employed by like an organization that might not like my employers might or coworkers might be like, they all post things in the industry, whereas I might just start posting things that I value and that are really important to me. Like I have a bamboo toothbrush, but might not necessarily in line with what I'm doing now and making it respectful.
Yeah, totally agree. And that is a real challenge. Okay, when you're earlier career, what you haven't got is that built up career capital where you can be like, I'm a real expert in this and this is why you need me. But you're also not as tied by being judged by your previous experience. And you have this freedom to, as I said before, that balance between lean into the passion and save the dolphins, or like stick close to finance because that's what I've got 15 years in. You can like go for the dolphins, right? Because you've got that freedom at this point in your career. I think what you have to do, there'll be two things that I would advise for you at this stage. I would think about what are the parts of your job that you do now. What people want when they're hiring someone early careers is someone that's got high potential, somebody that's got bags of passion and enthusiasm, goes the extra mile to work really hard, right? That's what people want. I think try to demonstrate you doing that in your job now. So you don't have to all of a sudden start talking about climate, but you can talk about a promotion that you got or something that you worked on that you were really proud of, or there are ways of putting across that you are a really brilliant employee that somebody's lucky to have. By, it feels a bit weird, but like just bragging about your job and how good you are at it. And then at the same time, I appreciate that it's so on the climate side of things, you might have to just be a little bit more incognito and maybe move into things like Slack and get into Slack communities like Work on Climate, where your current colleagues are not going to be probably, but you can start to post some things in there, ask for some advice, network with some people there. And then you might have to take your LinkedIn strategy more into the DMs, right? So be connecting with people, maybe commenting on their content and then sending them private messages to see if they'll jump offline on a call with you so you can be learning and absorbing knowledge. So
Good strategy there.
Thank you.
Excellent. Yeah. And no, James, you had a question, but your hand is down now. We're really out of time. So if you have a very brief question, feel free to throw it in.
Hannah actually covered it. So thank you very much for having me.
Okay, perfect. Great. All right, everyone, we're going to have to call it a day there. Thank you so much for attending. Thank you for your questions, your attention, and thank you a lot for Cherry being here today, sharing your so much experience and your strategies that I think we can implement right away to this. And thank you all. We're also very excited to invite you to have a look at what we do at RegenIntel, our foundations course. Certainly look at what Cherry does at Above and Beyond with recruitment, especially if you're in the UK. Like I said, they do have a job postings board there. And we look forward to engaging with you in the future. But thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Bye, everyone.